Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Adam Peters. He's the founder of the Strategic Veteran and the Stronghold community, and he helps veterans find purpose through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Peter Adams. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to discuss right now. We'll be talking about entrepreneurial success for veterans. So we'll come to this topic first. Let's understand a bit about your journey, Adam, so that people can learn directly from your journey itself.
Yeah, I joined the Army when I was 17 years old. Served from 2003 to 2015, did 4 deployments, 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan, and got out and spent a long time in a pretty dark place trying to find my way in the world after getting out of the Army. And so that culminated with an ayahuasca journey that kind of changed my life and showed me that my purpose is to help veterans stop killing themselves. So that's how I got started.
Right, right, Adam. So I want to understand means uh, in the military, once you move out of that, why does the transition become so difficult? Is it because of suddenly from a very disciplined life you are not able to cope with the life outside, or is it something else? I want to understand through your journey itself. As you said, you were in a dark place for whatever reasons. uh, I want to understand why this whole process becomes so difficult. Especially the impression goes that, especially in outside countries, there is so much of support also available. So why is it that people uh, find it difficult to understand about this whole transition thing?
Yeah, I think the transition becomes next to impossible for veterans to cope with because, if you take my case, for example, being in the Army from 17 to 30 years old, I became an expert at what I did, but it's very one track, right? So I had one job in the Army, and my job in the Army was an infantryman, and I was supposed to be the best infantryman I could be. And that doesn't translate well to the civilian life. So when you get out, you're losing your sense of purpose, your sense of identity, who you are, who you thought you were. You have no clue who the real you actually is and how that applies to the civilian world. So I think that's the big barrier there is just the loss of identity and purpose, because you've done this one thing at a really high level really, really well for so long. You don't know how to do anything else. You just hold on to that. You're not ready to let that go, if that makes sense.
Right, Adam. So most of the people who have been in this sort of a position, they know it that sooner or later they will come out of their position and into a civilian life. What stops them from preparing for it, say from 17 years to 30 years? You know it that by the age of 25, 27, you know that after 3 years or 4 years you are going to move out of this place. What stops you from preparing for that life? Isn't military also train Doesn't military job also train you to plan for things? Why is it difficult to plan for the civilian part of your life?
I think that's a really good question. First of all, the reason they do teach you to plan and all of that, but they don't give you the time to actually put a solid plan in place. They give you about between 3 and 6 months, depending on what you're doing, what position you hold, to actually go through the entire process of transitioning out. And in that time frame, they're throwing so many resources at you so fast, and they're not really explaining anything to you. So it's like a whirlwind. You don't have enough time to actually come up with a solid plan, research the things that you need to research, get experience with things that you may be unfamiliar with that you might think resonate with you. And that's what I'm trying to change with my company, the Strategic Veteran. The long-term vision is for it to be a skill bridge program where their last 6 months, they're their place of duty is the classroom, learning how to become an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, getting certifications that will propel them forward in business or the corporate world, and really taking advantage of that time instead of just showing up at a place on post somewhere, getting a brief from somebody who generally doesn't really care what happens to you after you get out. They're just collecting a paycheck and doing quote unquote their job. So I think that's really the big problem with transitioning out is there's not a solid, really good program to help us learn about who we are and what we will be without the military.
Right, right, Adam. So I want to understand then, isn't it that you get 6 months for whatever there, and then they're giving you a lot of resources during that point in time? So is it that veterans will have to spend or keep aside 1 to 2 years extra when they come out and do not rush into things, that they are not unkind to themselves, that they are much more compassionate to themselves, so that they are giving themselves enough time for not only that transition from military life to that, but mentally also you are transitioning, and get enough time to prepare that perhaps you are not getting when you are within the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Most veterans I talk to who are in transition or freshly, making that transition into the civilian world or no longer in, they do say that they would have liked to have between 1 and 2 years. And one of the most significant challenges is changing that mindset. And I like to relate it to the military is very much like a fixed mindset. You have one task, one mission, one purpose, one job, and that's what you focus on for your entire career. And you don't just wake up one day and adopt a growth mindset and learn how to look at the world from various different perspectives and see opportunity in things that you may or may not be interested in. And that takes time. And I think, like you just said, a year or two, leadership coming together and really not riding you till the end and making you sit in those positions with those responsibilities and continue to do those leadership roles that you may be in while you're getting out. They make you do that stuff. You still do your job until the very day that you get out. And so they don't maximize the time that you do have to actually work on yourself and discover what you're interested in and what might resonate with you when you are getting out. So I think that's also part of a large part of the problem.
Right, right, Adam. So, how are you making that help them make that mind shift through the strategic veteran? Is it easy? Is it very difficult? How do you do that? Secondly,
It's
yeah, carry on, carry on.
Yeah, it's like anything else, man. I just try to be an example. I try to lean on my experiences and share what I went through, what things helped me, what I discovered that ultimately led me back to my purpose. And I just try to share that with them, try to coach and mentor anybody who reaches out, asks for advice. You help them through what they're going through, whether that be, just being an ear to listen so that they can vent, or giving advice when they seek it out, or showing them skills that I've acquired that can help propel them forward in whatever idea they may have, whether that be running a side hustle and they don't know how to scale it, or learning how to buy a domain and host it so that they can set up a website and get into business.
Right. So when they are out, why entrepreneurship or why service? What is it that they generally look out for? I guess they are looking at something that they can get, some money out of it, because you need that money. You need that money to pay bills, even if you have got some money when you are out. Secondly, the purpose part, are these all possible to chase at the same time, or again it is all about being kind to yourself and look at things one by one? If you are moving in, why entrepreneurship, and how do you take care of the purpose at the same time if you want to?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship just naturally takes care of the purpose. And I have this theory, veterans in general, will tell you that they joined for a myriad of reasons, whether that be to travel or for college money or for, just to get out of small town America, where they grew up and see more of the world. But I think ultimately the reason that we all joined was to serve something bigger than ourselves. And I take an approach to business that, my whole goal is to just have a hand in improving people's position in lives through knowledge, education, help, mentorship, whatever that looks like. And that's serving something bigger than yourself. So for me, entrepreneurship is the path back to purpose because it still allows you to serve something bigger than yourself. You get to be a servant leader and help people improve their lives. And it's a never ending mission. It's yours. You own it. You make the decisions with it. Everything falls on you. And that can align with your core values and beliefs and how you want to approach things versus working in a corporation where you're never going to get close to the revenue, where you're always going to have a boss who tells you to do things one way and not the other way. And we as veterans are pretty resilient and like to solve problems and like to come up with new, ways to approach problems. And that doesn't always go well in this in the corporate world. So that's why I believe entrepreneurship is the path back to purpose. And I've got about 60 podcast episodes of my own talking to veteran entrepreneurs who believe the same thing, and it's worked for them. And they've crawled out of that transition hole and worked on themselves and given themselves grace and improved their mental health and their physical and emotional and spiritual health. So that's really the reason I feel entrepreneurship is the path back to purpose.
Right, right. What about, uh, that when you are in the service, you have this old complaints about PTSD or any sort of a trauma. How should they deal with that? Should they deal with that first, then venture out and look out for something? Or it can go hand in hand? Because that is not going to go away so easily until that also is taken care of. But at the same time, you also need to earn for yourself. What do you advise on these things?
I think that it's all works together. I find in my business talking to transitioning veterans is cathartic for me. It helps me work on the things that I need to work on because I'll talk to a veteran who's going through some struggles mentally or emotionally, and I give them the tools that they need to kind of work through that. And through that, I actually identify things in myself that may be weaknesses or that I need to put in more work. And so I would say first they have to get out of their own way and they have to understand that they're not broken. They're just experiencing this reaction to a trauma that they've had, which oftentimes goes much deeper than just the traumas of war. It's usually stemming from some kind of childhood trauma. And so I try to advise them to, while they're building their thing or trying to figure out who they are, to sit with their emotions and explore their emotions. For example, I used to deal with a lot of anger. So I would have to, look at myself and be like, hey, why am I angry? When have I felt angry before? What caused me to feel angry? And really just sitting with your emotions and exploring those things is the journey back to healing and getting better and overcoming the traumas of war or the traumas of childhood and the PTSD and all that good stuff.
Right, right. Now, a lot of people might say that, listen, in military, you had a certain way of doing things, and that will not apply in this uh, corporate atmosphere or in business. But actually it works in the military. Why doesn't it work in the outside world? If that is a complaint that people have, why does the veteran has to adjust so much rather than the corporate trying to learn those good things and adjust it to make things better for themselves? I want to
Well,
understand this dilemma from both sides.
yeah, I actually think the opposite of that. I think that the skills, I call them high leverage skills that we acquire in the military, discipline, leadership, problem solving, adaptability. I think those are all essential skills in the business and corporate world. And
Right.
really what it is learning how to translate those skills into a language that you can speak with other civilians. So applying it with maybe less directness, being a little bit more gentle in your approach to employing those skills when you're in the corporate world, and understanding that you can't approach it the same way that you did in the military, because that's not how civilians operate. Like, they don't respond the same way to the way you want to implement your ideas, your problem solving skills, or your adaptability skills. A lot of times it's very brash in the military, and the corporate world, that doesn't really work. So you just have to really rewire your communication mechanism and give yourself some grace and give others some grace as you guys go through this learning process of learning how to talk and communicate with each other. So I do think that those skills translate, and it's a breakdown in communication between veterans and civilians, and them not truly understanding each other, if that makes sense for you.
Right. So I want to understand, what can businesses uh, gain out of, because when they are hiring, obviously they know what they have to gain out of it. How can businesses make the best out of the veterans, and how can veterans make the best out of, out of the civilian life, and find a purpose for themselves? Where is the challenge, where is the mismatch? Because many a time there is a good match, and it lasts for a long time. But why is it that a general trend is that, there is seems to be a different sort of understanding from both sides?
Yeah, I think the first thing that corporations need to realize is you can't treat veterans as just a tax break, because that happens a lot. They hire veterans, they talk a big game to get them in there because they get tax breaks, and they can say that they have veterans, veteran employees, and this, that, and the other. What I think corporations need to do is they need to understand that, while you don't think veterans have the experience to fit in leadership roles within your company, that's where veterans actually thrive. You're taught leadership from day one in your journey in the military. So you are getting a master class every single day for your entire career in how to be a good leader. You're surrounded by leaders, good ones and bad ones. And if you are going to be a good leader, you learn how to identify, those good and bad leaders, and the things that you want to bring into your leadership style and leave out of your leadership style through example. And so I think for corporations, they need to understand, like, you're not bringing a veteran in to start at an entry level position. Like, that just doesn't work. Like, they have way more experience than that, and that's going to cause a lot of frustration in the veteran, because he or she sees a way to fix a problem, yet nobody wants to listen to them because they're so entry level. And then on the veteran side, you need to realize that nobody owes you anything. You are a volunteer, and you're not going to get $100,000 job right out of the military like you expect, particularly for enlisted guys. Officers is a little different, but you're not entitled to anything. So you might have to take a lesser position for a little bit, and then demonstrate that you are a fit for that senior level position or whatever. So that's kind of how I see it. Again, I push entrepreneurship because it's something that you own. It's something that you get to make the rules on. You get to create the corporate structure. You get to hire and fire. You get to make the rules. So that's why I push entrepreneurship. But if it's not for everybody, and if you want a corporate job and you want to be successful, understand you're not entitled to a senior level position just because you served your country and you do have valuable skills. You may have to take a step back and then work your way up to that, but you shouldn't also have to settle for an entry level position either. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, indeed, Adam. So first, I didn't know about the tax breaks that corporates get when they hire veterans. So it means it's a good. Do veterans get some sort of a tax breaks when they get
No,
into
sir.
entrepreneurship?
Nope. No, we don't. Nope. We just, the corporation just benefits off of having veterans as employees. And I'm not even sure how that really works, but I've been, exposed to it when I first got out and went into the corporate world. Everybody wants to hire a veteran. They get all kinds of incentives. I'm sure there's some kind of money that's involved behind having a certain number of veteran employees in your company, but they just don't want to put you in leadership positions or positions that I think that you're worthy of coming out of the military. They want to start you at the entry level jobs and kind of honestly treat you, like a day one, kind of new employee. And veterans are so much more than that, and you can benefit a lot in your company if you treat them the right way, and vice versa, they manage their expectations, and don't come in thinking that they're entitled to a bunch of different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, do you think with all these efforts by different quarters, including yours, are things getting better for the veterans, or is it becoming a difficult world or indifferent world for them?
I think with the work that I'm doing with partnering with different nonprofits here in the United States, and people finally being fed up with the suicide epidemic that plagues the veteran community, I do think that the difference makers are going to be the people like me who stand up and lead, and show them that there's a better way. So I like to think that it's starting to get better, but we have a long, long way to go, my friend.
Long, long way to go. And that is where your podcast also comes in, Adam. You talked about that. What Tell us a bit more about your podcast so that veterans and others can learn more about these issues from you.
Yeah, my podcast, The Strategic Veteran, is a podcast where I bring on veteran entrepreneurs. We talk about early life and what influenced them to join so that we have an understanding of who they are and where they come from. Then we talk quite a bit about the transition and how rough or not rough, or whatever that looked like for them. And then we talk about their business and why they're so passionate about it, and how it gave them their purpose back. And the idea behind my show was, I know that when I was in my darkest moment, being a couch potato, scrolling Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn, if I would have come across a show like mine where I could have seen other veterans be in the same place talking about the same, struggles that I was going through, it would have been enough to kind of wake me up and snap me out of that dark, depression I was in, and really made me kind of would have made me reevaluate, kind of the direction my life was going, and would have given me the opportunity to build something better for myself. Unfortunately, I didn't have a me when I was transitioning. And so that's really what I wanted my podcast and everything I'm building to be is a beacon of hope or light for transitioning and transitioned veterans who are struggling.
Right. The world did not have you, but the world has you now. And I'm sure a lot of people are learning from that. There is much to learn from you, Adam. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to learn more about you, more from you, connect with you. What is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is LinkedIn, Adam Peters, and everything else, podcast, everything else I have going on is on my website at thestrategicveteran.com. You can contact me there as well. There's a contact form. You can download episodes of the podcast. You can find out about the community that I'm building for veterans to help them network and learn business, and just overall give them a place to vent and get the things that they need to get off their chest in a judgment-free zone where they're going to get actionable advice and not ripped to shreds like in Facebook groups and other kind of toxic places. So that's the best way to connect with me. And I personally respond to everything. I do all of this by myself. So any comment, any DM, any email, that's all me. I'm 100% in on this, and I love helping people, giving advice, just making a difference. I just want to help people.
Absolutely making a difference, just wanting to help people. And absolutely, this is going to help a lot of people, I'm sure. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.